from scratch, where I'm covering the full production process of a vocal techno track, right from its very first idea all the way through to its final independent release. Episode 4 will be the final episode where I break down the original idea. We're going to be looking at the effects, ranging from background ear candy to uplifters and downlifters to provide underlying flow for the rest of the track. I'm super excited in the coming episodes to start charging ahead and finally finishing off the track. The next episode will be looking at getting down the basic song structure, which will give us a good foundation for laying down the rest of the track. Probably also noticed my banged up face and broken wrist. Things happen. It is what it is. You'll be seeing more of this in the next couple of episodes. So in this one, let's jump into the effects. So I've got the project open again. Let's have a listen to what we've got so far. So really starting to come out with a proper idea here. And finally, we're just going to be covering these last two groups here, the effects and the uplifters and downlifters. This is just what I've got so far. Obviously, this isn't going to be the final amount. There's going to be a lot more going on in the effects section and a fair bit more going on in the sweeps and impacts group that I've got going on here as well. Usually with my tracks, I use both of these groups fairly liberally, just adding in as much little kind of ear candy detailed sounds that I can, just to keep the track sounding nice and interesting. So let's go over what I've got so far. Starting with the effects. I break the effects up into tonal and atonal. So in the tonal effects, you're going to find everything that's got a clear pitch to it. And then in atonal, it's just going to be kind of more noise samples. So in this one, we just got a reverse clap like that. And then the more tonal ones are like this and this. Cool. So let's go over this one. So this is a pretty simple sound that I've been putting in a lot of my tracks lately. I've just been changing up the kind of like the sound that I feed into like the processing. And that processing is just very simply Valhalla Supermassive. And it has some really cool reverb presets. Also, this is a free plugin, by the way, so anyone can go ahead and download it. I might even link it in the description as well. If we go reverbs, large, and even just the 80s space verb here, so much that you can do with just this preset alone. Just change like the modes, mess around with the warp and delay and everything. Just mess around with like all the knobs. Maybe not the feedback, because that's what gives it that like nice long tail, but everything else you can just have a mess around with it and see what comes out. The real magic happens when you just feed any sound into it. And it doesn't even have to be a complex sound or anything like that. It can just be a very simple sound. So I'll just load up Serum 2 here. So on envelope 1, I'll just bring that down there. So it's a nice, just short sound. Literally just a pluck. And then if I turn Valhalla Supermassive on, it becomes this. So it becomes this nice textured little attack that you can put at the start of the drop, or like, you know, every 8 bars, just to create a little bit of extra depth and atmosphere to your track. And that's exactly what I've done here. Just fed a percussion sound into Valhalla Supermassive with that preset on there, the 80s space verb. And then of course I've just frozen it to audio as well, just so I don't wind up with this super long sample. So I would have made that sound in Serum 2, but you can literally just put any random percussion sound through it and it'll come out with a sound like this. And I've just got this at the start of the drop. And then, like I said, that can just go every 8 bars. And then I've just got kickstart on there just to duck it under the kick. Let's copy that over into our idea here. Hear that with everything else. And then the next tonal sound that I've got is just this detuned saw wave. So just like any synth with a couple of voices, and then you detune the saw waves. And then I've just added this bandpass on there. So it's just a Spire preset, but I'll remake a preset using Ableton stuff as well. I'll solo that. So pretty simple detuned saw wave. Let's chuck another one in there. I'll just use this same MIDI And this is just playing the root note. So E minor, we're in the key of E minor. It's just playing E, just at a random pitch. It doesn't even matter about the pitch. It's more about the processing afterwards that creates the effect. Let's just copy this down here and we'll go ahead and use, I think drift comes with every version of Ableton. So we'll just use the first oscillator here. Oscillator 1, make sure it's on the saw wave there. Then we'll just add a little bit of detune to the sound. Let's go unison mode. So we can bring this down a couple octaves. Turn that unison percentage up. And then on the envelopes here, so I'm guessing this first envelope just controls the amp. Nice. So that's our basic sound. A little bit different, but still that same general idea. And then we'll just go grab an auto filter, chuck it onto bandpass. And then all I was doing was I turned the resonance up a little bit and I just had this going from high frequency to low frequency over the course of the note. So you can jump into automation mode here and have that at a higher frequency there. And then just pop a dot at the start, pop a dot at the end. And that's the same as this auto filter here. So if we listen to my sound versus, you can even have the frequency start a little bit lower as well. In fact, I think this sound might actually fit the track a little bit better as well. But we'll stick with my original sound as well, but that's how you would get this sound that I've got going on here. So it's a combination of the synth and then the auto filter just sweeping from a high frequency to a low frequency. And then the rest of the processing just helps fit it into the track and add a little bit more depth, especially with this delay here as well. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And I'm just going to copy this over to our idea here. And you just want to move that around in the drop and see what sounds good. So we've got the start of the drop here. So I've almost sort of got this sound playing in the second half. So it's like 2 bars, then 2 bars here. And then that's kind of leading into like a little fill there. Or sorry, I should say leading into the second half of the drop there. We'll copy that, paste that there. So now we've got that automation there as well. So in the track, it sounds like this. So adding a nice little bit of detail to the track. Then we got Saturn 2, just adding a little bit of drive. So again, I mentioned this in previous episodes, but you can just replace Saturn 2 with the original Ableton saturator and either leave it on the analog clip and just drive it a little bit and bring the output down to gain match it. Or you can chuck it on soft sine, which will already drive the sound a little bit. You can even drive it a little bit more and then again, bring the output down to gain match it. So in audio effects, saturator, let's pop it on soft sine, which is already going to drive the sound just a little bit. So we can bring that output down to around -2 and that'll gain match it. So that's with Saturn. That's with soft sine. It's not adding a whole lot, but it's just warming the sound up just a little bit. So I'll get rid of that and I'll leave Saturn 2 on for mine. Then we got Pro Q4, again, easily replaced with Ableton EQ, just cutting out the low end, ducking the low mids a little bit just to remove that mud and keep it sounding nice within the mix, and then just brightening the sound up a little bit so you can hear it within the track. So without it, just kind of gets a little bit lost in the mix, especially without that little boost there. That just helps it sit nicely in the mix. And then we've got a delay, just add a little bit of depth to the sound. Fairly simple settings here. And again, just always mess around with the built-in filter on the delay as well, because it can kind of like change the vibes of the sound. And we'll solo that with the delay. So you can kind of hear that repeating left and right as the sound progresses. And then within the mix. So adding a nice bit of stereo width and a little bit of depth to the sound again. And then kickstart, just ducking it under the kick. And then on the atonal track, we've just got this reversed clap, no processing on it. I find these kinds of sounds just help like lead into other sounds. So you can see here, I've got it at the end of the first lot of 4 bars in the main idea here. And then I've also got it before the second time that detuned saw hits. So it kind of like quickly sweeps up and then that detuned saw hits nicely there. And again, I use these sounds quite liberally throughout the track. It just helps like quickly guide the ear to different sounds and helps the listener kind of hear more of the detail of the track. So without that, it's just kind of just missing that something, and then you can chuck that in. And of course in Ableton, if you want to reverse any sample, you can just click on the sample and press R. It might be Shift R on Windows, but that's the clap there. And then that's the reversed. So that's the effects so far. Let's give it a quick listen. Now, last but not least, we've got the sweeps here. So this just, again, helps guide the listener's ear to different sections of the tracks rather than different sounds. So you kind of use these every 4 to 8 bars throughout the entire track. And this is how you build uplifters and downlifters and how you can create motion and flow within your track. So in the uplifters, I've just got a tonal uplifter. And then a noise sweep as well. Very easy to find samples like this, but both of these are actually made within Serum 2. That's why the tracks are called Serum 2. Then, of course, they've got kickstart just on the tonal one, just to duck it under the kick again. So let's copy these into the idea so you can hear how they sound. And then I'll also show you how to quickly make a couple of these sounds quite easily. Give it a quick listen. You can hear how it kind of like rises up over the course of the 4 bars. So just kind of like guides into the next section. If you want to make these kinds of sounds, we can even do it just using Ableton plugins. So I'll chuck in a MIDI track here. Of course, you can easily find samples that sound like this, but if you want to start getting into designing your own types of these sounds, we'll grab Drift again. And I'm pretty sure this has a noise oscillator, so we'll turn this oscillator off. So we can turn this off and we can create a noise sweep just by turning this up. So now we've just got noise. We can shape the envelope a little bit, so we'll just do that. Turn the release all the way down just so we get one single block of noise when we hold down a note. And what we can do, so similar to how we made that detuned saw wave kind of effect as well. With noise, it doesn't matter what note you hold down, it's always going to be the same pitch because noise doesn't have a pitch. But I'm just going to pop it on E just so then I can make that tonal uplifter as well with the same preset. Now what you want to do is just grab audio effects, grab the auto filter, there it is, and just chuck it on bandpass again. So exactly the same as what we did with the detuned saw wave in the effects folder there. And then to make an uplifter, you just want to go from low frequency to high frequency, and to make a downlifter, you go from high frequency to the low frequency. So we can hear what that sounds like if I solo this. And then downlifter. Then what you'll also want to do is just chuck like a nice big reverb on there as well, just to add depth to that sound. And then you can chuck on stuff like phases and flanges and stuff like that to add a little bit more movement to the uplifter, just to keep it sounding a little bit more interesting. Or you can leave it dry and as is. And then yeah, to automate that, we can just click on the frequency and go like that. And then we've got a little noise uplifter. And then sometimes it sounds cool to curve this as well. If you hold down Option and then click and drag, it'll curve that. And then you can adjust the resonance to add a bit more of a sweepy kind of sound. It's as easy as that. And then you can freeze that, bounce it to audio, and then just keep using that throughout the track like what I've done here. Then if you're wanting that tonal uplifter, we'll turn the noise off, add in a saw wave. So now that sounds like this. Cool. Maybe we'll make this a little bit more interesting by adding in unison, maybe 4 voices. Let's see what. Okay, the voices doesn't really change too much. Cool. Maybe we'll leave it at 4 voices there. And then you just want to automate the pitch bend. So the pitch bend range, we'll want that to be significantly higher. It's only got 12 at the moment, so we can go with Ableton plugins. You just have to do it on the envelope. With other plugins like third-party plugins, they'll usually have a pitch bend wheel, and you can automate that. But with the Ableton plugins, you just go into the MIDI note here, the MIDI clip, I should say, and then we go MIDI control, pitch bend. So it sort of stays in the middle because the pitch bend goes plus and minus 12 semitones. So we'll pop a dot there and dot there. Bring that one all the way to the top. Bring that one all the way to the bottom. No, we don't want that extra one. And then we've got our tonal uplifter. And then again, you can freeze that out, add a couple of effects to it to make it sound a little bit more interesting, and then use that throughout your track. So that's how you get those sounds. And then the last sound is just a breath sample that I just found in a sample pack. Of course, you can just record that as well. So it just sounds like this. And it's just acting as a bit of a downlifter. So you could easily just make a noise downlifter as well and replace this with that. Now with that placed down, that finishes the idea that I started with. So I've completely rebuilt everything from the ground up from the first 4 episodes. So if you missed the last 3 episodes, go back and watch everything all the way through, and then you can be caught up to where we are here. And now we can charge ahead with finishing the track and getting it out there. So let's give it a quick listen to what we've got so far, and then we'll start building up the track in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Like two left shoes, lose the intention.